Assessment from the trenches. In other words, these are some ideas, observations, reflections that I've had in my many years of teaching, not really based on research, but just based on my experience. So take them with a grain of salt. First, it takes a long time to write a good assessment. 3 to 7 hours. It's just an approximation, but it could take even longer. And the reason is you have to deal with math equations. Formatting is very tricky. There's an answer sheet that you have to create if you want to mark quickly. You'll have to do a couple of versions, especially if you have different classes who have the same test. And you'll have to make revisions. You'll have to make yearly revisions, because if you give out answer sheets for the test, students talk from year to year. So it's a long process. Second point, it's very challenging to be clear. You know that from personal experience with me, but you will find as well that students think differently from you, and they will find ways to misinterpret what you're trying to communicate. So you really have to try to be clear on your questions. May be obvious, but you'll see what I mean when you start to do your own tests. Third, give students more than enough space to write the answers. They need the space to write the answers. I want to save paper too, but I also want them to learn, and I don't want them to be cramped and writing in little tiny spaces. It also discourages them from showing their work if you don't give them enough time. Enough space for it. Fourth, break up each question into sub-steps and carefully determine the marks that you want to give for each step. That is so critical. If you have a multi-step question, the students should get part marks for doing those steps. You want to encourage process and not the final answer. 5. Make sure that your questions match exactly what you taught in class. No surprise questions. Don't expect them to know something that they've never been taught before in a different format because you think they should know it. This is research based, and students just don't transfer well to new situations. And so that comes up to number 6. No trick questions unless you really want to do it for bonus. And students do love bonus questions. But you're not trying to trick the students. You're trying to see. Math is hard enough. You're just trying to see if they understand what you've taught. You don't need trick questions. That's something they did in my time, but it's really kind of a nasty thing and should be discouraged, in my opinion. 7. Remember to accommodate IEP students, right, in terms of giving them some extra time, extra space, maybe a quiet area away from the other students. Don't know if they'll need readers, but please try to adjust the test for them. 8. Marking takes a long time. Have the full answer sheet available after the test. It's critical if you want to do it. Number 9. This isn't advice. You have to make a decision whether you like to mark the whole test or mark one question from each test. It takes a long time to do that, mark one question from each test. And it's done so that we ensure consistency of how that question is marked. I always mark the whole test. It just was easier for me to do. You'll have to make a decision on that. It drove me crazy. I tried to mark the one question stuff before, and it drove me crazy doing the same question over and over again. And number 10, give general feedback to the class, not averages. That's just my opinion. If you give an average, half the class are going to be discouraged, and I don't want to discourage the class. I would just give them general feedback. Most people did well, or we need to work on a few things, but in general, try to make the class feel good. You don't need the numerical averages. Some of you will argue against this, but so that's my 10 points on assessment from the trenches.